Islam, 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 and welcome to The Moorish Light Continues. The Revolution is a podcast. And I like to always rise by opening up by saying prayer, which is the Moorish American prayer, which is Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. So I'm working on my studio, so y'all just let's listen for the message. All right. First, I rise, giving praises to the Almighty God, Allah, the causeless cause and the rootless root from which all things have come. I give honor to the last prophet in this dispensation, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, in the first, second, and third form. I give honor I give honor to Grand Sheikh John Givenzeal, Prophet Noble Drew Ali reincarnated. I give honor to Grand Sheikh Richardson Dingle Eel, Prophet Noble Drew Ali III, as well as to Grand Sheikh Timothy Dingle Eel, modern day Moses and Aaron. And we'll get into that on one of the podcasts because I know somebody got something. Somebody saying something. I can hear you. It says, I also would like to give honor to my teacher, which I already did. I like to give honor to my home, 1055 North Milton Avenue. Our Grand Sheik is there. It's Tiffany. Grand Sheik is Tiffany Jones Bay and the royal staff there. I give honor to Supreme Grand Sheik and Sheikess Prather Eel. And once again, I'd like to welcome you to the revolution, to the revolution that is a podcast. And I needed to do one thing here. I don't know if I can share this, but I want to make the effort. No, that's not it. Alrighty. So I'm going to read you something. You might can't see it, but I'll do better next week. The teachings and purpose of the More Science Temple podcast. This podcast is created to introduce listeners to the teachings of the Moorish Science Temple Divine and National Movement as imparted by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Our purpose and focus, our goal is to share critical, divine, national, historical, constitutional, and moral truths. These foundational teachings aim to address and solve the pressing issues affecting our community today. Guidance for liberation. The lessons offered here serve as a solution to the challenges of mental slavery and the so-called Negro problem. They are not intended as alternatives, but as pathways to true emancipation. Restoring our national identity through correcting the betrayals of the Reconstruction era. We seek to restore our national identity and secure our rightful place among the families of nations. Citizenship, as taught here, is seen as the great equalizer for humanity, distinguishing between genuine rights from merely granted privileges. So I just had to share that, and and so that, so just that's our introduction. And I'm still in the process of working on this. So today we're going to talk about nationality, and this we're going to be using a book. We're going to start with the book. The name of the book is Lincoln World Emancipator, and it's written by an Englishman. It's not written by anybody here. But as always, I usually start off reading from the Holy Quran of Mecca, and I want to do that again today. So I'm going to have to use my phone because I forgot to open it up. So y'all don't have to bear with my process here. So I'm going to read, I'll just read Surah 106 from Surah 3. I mean, Surah 2, Ayat 106. It says, on a day, some faces will be lit up with white, and some faces will be in the gloom of black. To those faces will be said, did ye now reject faith after accepting it? Taste then the penalty for rejecting faith. And it goes on to say, the face expresses our personality, our inmost being. White is the color of light. To become white is to be illumined with light, which stands for felicity. The rays of the glorious light of Allah. Black is the color of darkness, sin, rebellion, misery, removal from the grace and light of Allah. These are the signs of heaven and hell. The standard of decision in all questions is the justice of Allah. Now, I read that because, we do have a black and white concept that exists here in these United States. And that concept is a plantation concept, because we see the Europeans as white and we see ourselves as black. Well, that's plantation. That plantation today is the mental slavery plantation. And we're functioning in this system assuming that opportunity is progress. And what it is that you didn't progress, you were given an opportunity to be yourself. So we are mistaking opportunity for progress because we always had the intelligence, we always had what we needed, but for some reason we try to take these opportunities because that now they're talking about we have children that are geniuses. We always had children that were geniuses. They just never had the opportunity to express it. We have to be masters because we are the founders of civilization. So I need us to kind of rethink what we consider progress, and it's essential that we do that, because if we don't, we're going to be stuck on this mental slavery plantation, also known as the Negro problem, for another 100 years. So it's time for a change. It's a time to think not necessarily a new way, but to think in a way that for progress, for true progress, and true progress is dealing in our originality. So one of the things that and I'm going to go here before I go into my other lesson, and this is chapters this is chapter 48 of our Holy Quran. And it says that the world may hear and know the truth. Among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation, descendants from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Doesn't mean we don't dislike Europeans, but I'll explain that in a minute. Neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and refined founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Why does the prophet say this to us? Because with integration, we're losing who we are. And the things that are that we see as progress is imitating the European and what he considers as beauty, what he considers as ideal. So we're identifying with him. Whereas because we came from a plantation, the first thing we need to identify with is ourselves. Excuse me for 1 second, because this is irritating all my nerves right here. Hold up. don't know why that irritated me so. But anyway, so as we move along on this path, we're going to talk about how integration is across the board. We are currently trying to integrate blackness everywhere. We're calling everything black, but black is just a color. It is not an identity. That's why you can put it on anything because it's a color. It's not an identity. It is a color. And we need to definitely identify with a nationality, not a color. So let me give you the basics. Our nationality is Moorish American, our race is Asiatic, and the shade of our skin is olive. So we have, when we look at our situation, for example, we have organizations that say we are Greeks. We are not Greeks. We're not Greeks. But we call ourselves Black Greeks. Does that make sense? So if you're saying you're Greek, whose customs are you imitating? So we need to truly self-examine what it is that we are saying to ourselves and to our children, because one of the things, if we were told we were free, then we were not given proper education. Then the only education we got was what they gave us. So one of the examples is, if you educated my foreparents and you told them some things like Jesus is a European, you told them they were black, Negro, and colored, then that generation passes that information down to the next generation and the next generation, and it's word of mouth passing on, and there are no established facts to substantiate why you are calling yourselves black. So one of the things I said I wanted to do, and I'm going to do, and hopefully I still have my book up. Yeah. And I said we were going to look at a book. This is called John. This is written by John Drinkwater, an Englishman. And it says individual liberty and national unity. What is individual liberty as conceived in the best democratic thought? The best thought that is in America and England today. Let's look at the facts honestly and go back, if needs to be, simple beginnings. At first, let us get away from the notion that the real democratic idea is that one man is as good as another. If the word good has any plain meaning at all, it is manifestly absurd to say that Bill Sykes was as good a man as George Washington, or that George III was as good a man as William Shakespeare. The true democratic idea is not that one man is as good as another, but that in natural privileges and opportunity, one man shall have as good a chance as another. So that Bill Sykes, if at the end he has still been unable to make a decent job of his life, shall not be able to tell society that he failed because he was deprived of his natural rights as an individual. Now, what they use to help us believe that they've uh, covered that, filled that gap is civil rights. You got the civil rights bills. You have the what they call, I guess, the gay rights, equal privileges. They got all these things that and most of the things that they're calling are saying that they're handling are social issues. Now, I don't understand where citizenship and social issues should not be mixed. Because if we're dealing in citizenship and equal opportunity, what your personal preferences are has no place in it. That's your personal preference, and that's your business. But why does it have to be my business? So under that civil rights and under those all these little programs, we're just losing the whole concept of the equity of citizenship. So let me read a little further. It says, do we have a natural right to be who we are? Under the civil rights thing, we ended up with what we call integration. Integration in itself, when you integrate something, you have to have two parts. You brought us into a system that never even taught about us. And now here recently, we're trying to call ourselves quote unquote progressive, and we're trying to make everything African or black or whatever you want to call it. But history in itself already is history, and you don't have to do that when you know who you are. Let me read a little further. It is, by the way, to say that given his natural rights, Bill Sykes is pretty sure to make a far better job of his life than he ever does without them. So, knowing who I am, who my forefathers were, what my rights are as far as moving from slavery to freedom, I should know these things. I should understand these things. But we so busy trying to put up this false front until we try to ignore slavery, or we try to perpetrate as if we've overcome it. But we did physically overcome it, but mentally what happened? What happened mentally? It says the sanctity of natural rights is not finally satisfied by universal education and universal franchise. So universal that, and that's, and most of us should know that's the right to vote, and of course going to school education. But there has to be that little piece that teaches me about me and who my forefathers were. I need that because that's part of my, as y'all like to say, DNA. Who I am is part of my DNA. Then I won't need plastic surgery to look like you. I won't try to fix myself into this, what we think is a perfect image. But let me read on because I went to the left. I don't want to go to the left. It says these things properly understood and exercised are well enough, but both these and other presumably liberal institutions may sometimes have the effect of betraying the very freedom of the individual that is their right function to foster. Now here goes some real meaty stuff. I need you to listen to this. When an educational system engages itself, as it too often does, in training a child to a preconceived end, instead of fitting him to frame a purpose of his own. When a universal and equal franchise is used by a majority to deprive a minority of self determination in some purely personal affair, you have the seeds of tyranny bearing their rank fruit in systems established in the name of liberty. Let me read it again for you because I know it might have went over somebody's head. So let me go back and read that paragraph again. When an educational system engages itself, as it too often does, in training a child to a preconceived end, instead of fitting him to frame a purpose of his own, and when a universal and equal franchise is used by a majority to deprive a minority of self-determination in some purely personal affair, you have the seeds of tyranny bearing their rank fruit in systems in the name of liberty. Now, let me see if I can break this down for you just a little bit. When we were on the plantation, we were classified as property. So that means if I was Mr. Johnson's property, I carried Mr. Johnson's name. If I was Mr. Washington's property, I carried Mr. Washington's name. If I was Mr. Seabreeze's property, I carried Mr. Seabreeze's name. This is 2025. Why are we still carrying the names that identify us as property? Because Mr. Johnson from Europe is definitely not the same as Mr. Johnson, born here in the United States with a Moorish heritage, calling himself black. Or Miss Washington, who we know is from Europe. Now, how do we get a Miss Washington from Europe and a Miss Washington from the Asiatic race? This makes absolutely no sense unless a change never came on board. And because it didn't, because the change did not come on board, what happened? We had to make, we had to take that slave mind, and we had to create an illusion for that mind, and we did that, and that was done under Reconstruction by telling us that our problem was not slavery but discrimination. So once they did that, our fight was no longer about us having our own. It became a fight of, can I go where you go? Can I eat where you eat? Can I shop where you shop? Can I do this? Because, see, I grew up in the era where everything I needed was in my little neighborhood until I was able to go downtown and couldn't try on clothes. Yeah. See, I got the history. I've lived it. I've lived the history. I'm not talking about something that I read in a book. So let's read a little further. The only natural right of an individual worth bothering about is his right to freely and completely to realize himself. What does that look like? My nationality is more. I have. Let me do it this way. I have birthrights. Birthright one, my nationality. Birthright two, my race. Birthright three, my religion. Birthright four, my land. Birthright five, my flag. Birthright six, my principles. Birthright seven, self determination. Now you say we free. We believe we equal. But if you started off, if they told you you were free and you received nothing, what were you working with? Because my lessons teach me, if I add nothing to nothing, what do I come up with? Nothing. If I take nothing from nothing, what do I come up with? Nothing. It says, so the only progress in the world comes when a man, for good or ill, is allowed to wholly to be himself. Wholly to be himself. Wholly, not Wholly. Wholly to be himself. Because if not, you'll see what you see today. Our youth are getting caught up. They're being geared towards becoming criminals because you slap them on the hand after they do something and send them back out there, and they do something else and you slap them on the hand and you send them back out there. So by the time they get there the third or fourth time, they're career criminals or career prisoners. Out, I'm watching generations full of so much hate and anger that they're just tearing at each other. Not just us now. I'm not gonna say that's just us because the European get a little crazy with it too. Everybody want to fight. Let me read a little further. You cannot make him really better than he is by legislation. All you can do by legislation is when he has been stunted in his growth is and not allowed to become himself fully, is to prevent the trunicated version of himself from being a nuisance to his fellows. So let's look up trunicated because I know somebody said, "What is she talking about?" Do I have my dictionary? Yep. I'm spelling this trunicated. Let's see. Oh wait, no, I've spelled it wrong. Let me go back. Truncated. I'm sorry. That's why I spelled it wrong because I said it wrong. Trun. Did I put? Let me go back. Let me go to John. Here we go. Truncat. Truncat. Okay, trunicate. To shorten by cutting off a part, cut short. So, and what in essence what it's saying is, let's look at some some synonyms. Or let's see, look at it from a British perspective, since this was written. Shorten by cutting off part, end, or top. So that means not really knowing who you are. So you running around here. Um, you're running around here not wholly yourself, and you're just doing all kinds of things. And I'm trying to get to my. I was trying to get to um, my thesaurus, so I'm gonna have to go back. Truncated. Let's see. Okay. All right, so an abbreviated, abridged, curtail, cut short. So you're not really your whole self. So this version of yourself is running around. And I can say that that particular version, of course, would be running around calling yourselves black, Negro, colored. And the principles that go along with this are actually hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. And with every generation, it's getting a little worse. So we definitely have to do something about this. It says this doctrine does not imply a license for every man to run amok and intimidate society. For the splendid and eternally hopeful thing about human nature is that when whenever it is allowed full rational development, it hardly ever wants to run amok or to intimidate anyone. So our whole society right now is running amok. And I don't know if I'm seeing a true perspective here, but I look at I look at TikTok and whatever reels, whatever, and I'm like, what is going on in the world? All the anger, all the shit people just doing things because we have allowed, because we're so busy trying to justify this blackness. We're so busy trying to not let people respect who their forefathers were. We're trying to create the scenario that everybody's equal. But everybody's only equal when they are being themselves. Once you have to modify yourself, your equality is out the door. And if you step from a plantation into a society, you really stuck. So instead of fighting for citizenship, you're fighting for you're fighting for you're fighting for civil rights. I mean, this is 2025. There should be some changes in the land by now. Wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you think there would be some changes in the land by now? I'm trying to make sure the prophet's in my background because that's who got my back. I just want y'all to know who got my back. There should be some changes in the land. And those that let me also qualify this a little bit more. Because historically speaking, those changes happened in 1865, or they were finalized in 1865. And we were to go through an emancipation process. That's what we were supposed to do. And if we understood that, we could look at, we would understand that instead of the January the 1st, 1863 proclamation, we would understand that there were four proclamations actually. You have the September the 22nd, 1862 proclamation, which is the proposal. And then you have the December the 1st, 1862 proclamations, which gives instructions. And then you have January 1st, 1863, where it starts to take effect and identify the states that are in rebellion. So, it's some learning that has to happen in order to promote the necessary change for us as a nation of people, not as a group, not as a sorority or fraternity, but as a nation, we need a change. And that we clearly need to understand that we need a change, and that change was brought to us in 1928, well, 1913 actually, by Prophet Noble Drew. Because in 1913, as a people, we should have been celebrating our first Jubilee. We should have been in the process of returning everything we received on the plantation back to the so called slave master, which would mean his name, his religion, this so called race we call ourselves, this color. That stuff should have been gone and out the picture. And I do this because as a former educator, well, not former, I'm still an educator, but as someone who knows that, what happened to my dictionary? We need to really, really go in depth and understand this term black. And I do this as often as possible. I don't want to synonym, I want a definition. And I'm going to go through this definition because I'm trying to understand, as educators, why we don't deal with this uh, definition. I was reading here's the definition. First definition: relating to or belonging to any of the various human population characterized by dark skin pigmentation, specifically the dark skinned peoples of Africa, Oceania, and Australia. And B says, relating or noting to the descendants of these populations without regard for the lightness or darkness of their skin tone. Then they have C, African American. Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly. Now this says often offensive, used as a noun reference to a person, a black is often considered offensive. A member of the and it's just repeating itself. And it also once again says African American. So I said, well, let's go down a little further. As a noun, you're talking about Hugh Lafayette, 1886 to 1971, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. I'm not sure. The Sir James Wyatt, English pharmacologist. No, I'm not sure what that means. But let's go down here to three. I want you to. I just want you to taste this. I want you to feel it because if you don't start thinking, especially my PhDs, being a being a color that lacks hue and brightness, absorbs light without reflecting any of the rays composing it. And then you have your synonyms, and then you have your anonym, which they say is white. Characterized by the absence of light, enveloped in darkness, soiled or stained with dirt, gloom, gloomy, pessimistic, dismal, deliberately harmful. But this is what you're telling our children. Six, boding ill, sullen or hostile, coffee or tea without cream, without any moral quality or goodness. But this is what you're teaching our children. And you want me to say, oh, that's wonderful. No, it's not. Marked by disaster or misfortune, wearing black or dark clothing or armor, based on grotesque, morbid, or unpleasant aspects of life. This is what you're teaching our children. For a check, in parentheses, the check mark flag done or written in black to indicate as on a list which is undesirable, substandard, potentially dangerous. This is what you're teaching our children. Illegal or underground. Because, see, when I was a teacher, I wanted a child to understand a word. I sent them to dictionary. I don't know what y'all sending them children to make them understand that this is not what blackness is. What dictionary are you using? Illegal or underground. Showing a profit, not showing any losses. You know who making the profit, right? Deliberately false or intentionally misleading. The British boycott of certain goods products by trade union, and it's also in the form in which steel, in the form in which it comes from the rolling mill or forged unfinished. But this is what you're teaching our children. You're building a curriculum on this. You're building a curriculum on this. You got blackout to lose consciousness. So our people run around here blacked out. Is that what the issue is? Is that why y'all can't get it right? And you don't understand that this is a slave label to erase, obliterate, or suppress, to forget everything relating to a particular event or person. We forgot our nationality. We forgot we're at home. We forgot our race. Yeah, so we are blacked out. But it's going to take us to take just a humility pill and ask the question, if not black, then what? If not black, then what? Who are we? So in 1913, a prophet Noble Drew Ali came on the scene to teach us who we are. If you don't believe me, we can look at chapter 48. The end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. in the time fulfilling of the prophecies. And I'm going to close on this note because I do this. This is my Tuesday. I do have a meeting today, so I started a little early and I'm going to end a little early so I can get to my meeting on time. It says the last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by a law to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. So now we're in these modern days. In these modern days, there came a forerunner of Jesus who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah. And his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam. And his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men. Now here's the hit, as my dear friend Grand Sheikah Yvonne Greenhill would say, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. Because somebody is going around the world teaching everybody that they nobody. All they have to do, all they have to do is worship Jesus. And I mean, this is universally. But here's what you need to understand. Your own vine and fig tree come through your forefathers. And we don't all have to be the same because we weren't, if you look around the world, we are created the same. My Adam and Eve is not your Adam and Eve. That's why we have all these nationalities, because the great God Allah is universal. And he can make as many Adams and Eves, which actually represents beginning, as he so chooses. But when men decide that they're greater than the great God Allah, they're going to guide you down their path. And when the great God Allah saw that we were not respecting who he made us to be, he sent a prophet that said that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. You know, you can go on you can look up different things and you can see where Jesus is represented in various nationalities. He doesn't look the same everywhere. But somebody has put out a lesson where Jesus is just a European. And you know the thing is that you don't have to put up pictures anymore because the image has been embedded in your mind from generation to generation, and you're not even consciously aware that that is what has happened. So let me read a little further. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth. Excuse me. Among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So, as I'm going to go to the verse where I started out with, which is 6, we as a clean and pure nation, descendants from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to marry into the families of the pale skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion. because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Now, I would have to say we've gotten to the point where we have a nation led by people who think they are equal to the creator, and they defy his laws and his rules, and we just tote along because it's popular. Well, let us not let popularity determine what our reasoning is anymore. Let us stop and think. Let us do some studying. Let me read a little further because I do want to finish this chapter. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation, the covenant of the great God Allah, or you may call him Jehovah. He has different, depending on where you are, you might call him a different name, but he's still a great God Allah, infinite, the author, creator, infinite beyond our comprehension. And his covenant is honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Now, is he talking about your immediate parents? You can say that, but I don't think he gave any of your immediate parents some land, some earth land. Did the great God give your parents some earth land, or did they buy it? So obviously, there should not be on this earth today a landless people, because the great God of law gave everybody a piece of land. So come, all ye Asiatics of America, hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. Because of some of the things I'm saying, some people might be saying, "Oh, she just full of hate. Oh, she don't like this and shit." That's not true. I get along with everybody. I love everybody. But guess who I love more? Me and my people. And I think that's only law. That's only natural. You ain't gonna see a dog run over to the cat fight. You ain't gonna see the dog run over to the cat house. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all the true and divine prophets. So, of course, that is the note that I'm going to close on. And next week we will get into some other topics. And I'm working on having it so that you can talk to me or whatever we have to do so we can dialogue. We're going to work on that. Um, but I will be posting the program. Let me go back, put my face back up here. Again, you are listening to The Moorish Light Continues. The Revolution is a podcast. Um, I'm learning to do some things I've never done before. Usually, I have I had somebody that handles my technology, but they done put me in independence. So y'all just bear with me. It's going to get better. It's going to get better and better and better. That's what it's going to do. I kid you not. I've been saying y'all a song. Y'all don't know. And I'm also going to add a little poetry corner here. But before I go, let me show you this. Um, and that means that August the 30th, 2025, Ancient Forefathers Day at Eager Park, 1044 North Durham Street, Baltimore, Maryland. It begins at 1 p.m. There will be culture, food, and music. There's some vendors, Urban Bibliophile Candle Company, Juice World Cold Pressed Juice, Baltimore Palpatine Community Farm, Be More Bites, Star Treatment, Argyle Caribbean Eats, and more. So come and join us on August the 30th at Igor Park, which is at 1044 North Durham Street. Also, Marcus Garvey Day will be at Harlem Park, August the 16th. Please join us there. And on September the 27th, we will be doing Actual Freedom Day in Washington, D.C., as well as having an Actual Freedom Day um, September the 21st. That's a Sunday, Actual Freedom Day Sunday School. So there's some things coming up. Please take the time to join us. And I thank you and I appreciate you for joining the Moorish Light Continues. Um, but here's my last message to you: embrace the prophet, embrace Allah, embrace divine and national, embrace one another, and embrace the mission. And once again, we thank you and appreciate you for allowing us to bring to you the Moorish Light Continues in love and understanding. Peace.